The internet, coming to you from the Road 55 studio in Edmonton, Alberta, where every episode we feature a different thought leader or best-selling author, all in the name of helping you become the best leader you can be. You're going to love today's conversation with Roger Martin. We talk about how oftentimes when businesses are not performing to the level that you expect, it's not because of work ethic or desire. It's more because the models that guide our actions are insufficient. Roger also gets very personal with us and shares some of his own stories, from going from a Harvard graduate student to becoming a world-renowned thought leader and best-selling author. We also get into social media and some of the consequences that's happening right now when Kim Kardashian can earn as much money in a single tweet as Cindy Crawford earned across the entirety of her career. You're going to enjoy this conversation. Now, my very special guest today is Roger Martin. In 2017, Roger was named the world's #1 management thinker by Thinkers 50, a biannual ranking of the most influential global business thinkers. Roger is a trusted strategy advisor to the CEOs of companies worldwide, including Procter & Gamble, Lego, and Ford. Roger is a professor emeritus at the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto, where he served as dean from 1998 to 2013, academic director of the Michael Lee Chin Family Institute for Corporate Citizenship in 2004 to 2019, and Institute Director of the Martin Prosperity Institute from 2013 to 2019. In 2013, he was named Global Dean of the Year by leading business school website Poets and Quants. His newest book, A New Way to Think, Your Guide to Superior Managerial Effectiveness, comes out in May. His previous 12 books include When More Is Not Better, Creating Great Choices, written with Jennifer Riel, Getting Beyond Better, written with Sally Osberg, and of course, Playing to Win, written with A.G. Lafley, which won the award for Best Book of 2012-2013 by Thinkers 50. He's written 30 Harvard Business Review articles. Roger received his BA from Harvard College with a concentration in economics in 1979 and his MBA from the Harvard Business School in 1981. He resides in South Florida with his wife, Marie-Louise Scafty. Roger, it is such a pleasure to welcome you to Unleashed.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. Can I make a little plug, Jeff? I noticed in the lead-up role next week you've got Bob Sutton on the podcast. For those of you who are listening here who don't know Bob's work, he's in my view one of the 10 most intriguing, interesting, insightful management thinkers in the world. So tune in next week would be my thought. Bob is terrific.
Yeah, Roger, thank you so much. I'm sure he would say the same thing about you, and I feel pretty lucky every episode to be talking to people like you and Bob. So thank you for that endorsement.
Not at all. It's true.
So there's a bit of a rare occurrence, Roger. I have to admit, I get a lot of ribbing for my love of the New England Patriots, but I understand you're a Patriots fan as well.
I am, and I consider myself sort of a legitimate one because I was a fan of theirs when I was in college and business school, and they were horrible. They were just horrible for so many years, and so I was a long-suffering fan. And then over the last while, all of that patience has paid off. So I'm cautiously optimistic that this year will be better than last year, which was better than the year before. So we shall see.
Yeah, it seems to be getting tougher and tougher by the day, though, with some of the movement that's happening in the AFC, and of course the move the Dolphins made yesterday. But we digress.
Yes.
Yeah, I also have to say there was I had an equal parts excitement and trepidation to speak with you today, and I'm going to tell you why I had some trepidation. I have a Bachelor of Commerce degree, and yes. I feel a little bit ashamed that I didn't pay more attention in economics class. And so I can already hear my instructor, Erhan Herkut, if he was tuning in today. So Roger, at any point along the way of the discussion, if you feel some disappointment that I don't know more about economics, don't hold back, because I deserve it.
No, I thank you for telling me. I don't think that will be a problem. I was trained in economics originally, and I think it is a mixed blessing. It is a mixed blessing. There's over application of economic theory in the modern world in my view, and so I don't think you missed anything.
Well, that's fair, and I appreciate that support. So you've got your 13th book coming out in May, entitled "A New Way to Think." What was, and you're not that far removed from writing your last book, "When More Is Not Better." I don't think that's only a couple of years old now. So what was going on? What were you seeing in the world, Roger, that was sort of served as the impetus for writing another book so quickly?
Yes. Well, in truth, Jeff, it isn't quickly from my perspective. I've written a book every 2 years for the last couple of decades, so it's sort of my normal cycle. But what I saw going on in the world that inspired it is I guess I've just seen executives stick with models that don't work for longer than I would have imagined. Right. So one of my favorite examples on this one is in order to get senior executives to pursue more shareholder value maximization, you should provide them with heavy stock-based compensation incentives. Right. That's been a theory since, famous article in 1976 by Michael Jensen and Bill Mechning that sort of said that you've got to create that alignment through stock-based compensation. Otherwise, you'll have this agency problem. So we're talking close to 50 years now. You would think that there would be some good, solid analysis that would demonstrate that sometime in the last 50 years, the provision of stock-based compensation incentives for performance of CEOs would have created better shareholder value performance. There isn't.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the sections.
So after 50 years, when something doesn't work, you keep doing it. I like that. So that's sort of the motivation. It's these things seem to stick with us for longer than I would have ever thought.
So, and that's one of the sections in your book, and a question I wanted to get to. So let's go there right now. Why is putting shareholders' interests actually inversely associated with shareholder value?
Well, it's because the way we've done it, the theory that we've used to do it, kind of presumes that one, and you can do this directly, right? And you can't. I mean, it's like trying to get somebody to love you. I mean, you can tell them, "I love you. I want you to love me," directly, right? But that's probably not going to do it. In fact, they'll probably kind of love you less, or go find somebody else who's less annoying. It's by doing other things that the net result is that love and affection. And so there's, in shareholder value maximization, the idea that saying that you want to do it and providing incentives, monetary incentives for people to do it, won't help that out, right? What will help you get that is by doing the things that inevitably lead to shareholder value maximization. So, I mean, I think there was a better theory. It was in 1948, Robert Wood Johnson, founder of Johnson & Johnson, right? He created a credo that's engraved in granite in their headquarters that says, customers, he says patients, because their customers were patients come first, employees come second, communities in which we operate come third, and last. He didn't even say next, he said last come the shareholders. But if we do the first three well, they will earn a fair return. And last time I checked, Johnson & Johnson is worth about $300 billion. It was probably worth, I don't know, $500 million when it was founded. So not pursuing shareholder value maximization, in that case, putting it not second, not third, last, is what got you shareholder value maximization. That to me is a better theory. That's a better model to pursue than to pursue aggressively shareholder value maximization and saying that's what it's all about. It's all about.
Right. So put customers first. And Roger, if I'm not mistaken, that credo has got Johnson & Johnson through some pretty significant crises.
Yes, yeah, it got them through the Tylenol crisis, where they did something that at the time everybody said, "Whoa, I mean that's crazy. You're taking all the Tylenol off the shelves because in one store in one city they were spiked with cyanide and people died." And J&J said, "Yeah, that's we've got to put better barrier protection on it, and we can't have old bottles of Tylenol on the shelf." And so we'll write off, I think it was 300 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But that is saying customers come first. Now, I would say things have not gone as well on that front. Recently, they're strongly implicated in the opioid crisis. And so I think the credo has faded some, which is a sad, sad thing, given what a great company Johnson & Johnson has been.
Yeah, fair enough. Roger, you also talk about competition in your new book, and you've got some really interesting perspectives on that. What do we get wrong oftentimes about competition?
I think we think competition happens at a level that is inconsistent with how customers think about it. We think that Coca-Cola Limited competes with PepsiCo, for example. But in my view, that's not really where the competition really happens. It happens at the level of I want a sports drink. Do I want Powerade or do I want Gatorade? Right? You don't say, do I want a beverage made by the PepsiCo Limited or the Coca-Cola company? It's Gatorade or Powerade. If you want a bottled water, again, you don't say, do I want a Coke product or a Pepsi product? You say, do I like Dasani or do I like Aquafina? And even with the colas, it's, do I want Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi? So why that's important is competition takes place at what I think of as the coal face of competition, where a customer, whether it's a B2B customer, buying an aircraft or a control system, or a consumer, they are looking at products that are facing off against one another. Therefore, to me, the duty of the corporation is it's got to be helping the business that's at the customer coalface win. If it is not, it has no utility, in fact, has negative utility. So this whole idea that the corporation exists to control and coordinate, set goals, make sure people, the company, the entities below are doing their job right, that's not a useful role. It's a bureaucratic role, and this is why big companies are getting split apart, because they're not creating roles, not creating utility that counts at the customer goal face. So in some sense, competition takes place there, and every level above the coal face has to figure out how it can help the coal face compete to a greater extent, all the way to the top of the company.
Right. And when you say that competition exists more on the front lines, it really resonates with me. And I often think about a grocery store. I think about Safeway oftentimes, and that the competition is won or lost by the quality of the cashier, as an example. I'm not interacting with the CEO of Safeway. I'm interacting with Nancy, who's always checked my groceries out, right? And she knows my name, and she's friendly, and she does a good job. And like, that's where the competition is sort of won or lost. Is that a little bit about what you're getting at?
Absolutely. And do you even care what other cities than the one you live in Safeway has stores?
Not at all.
Totally irrelevant to you. Do you care if Safeway has stores in the other half of, geographically the other half of your city? You don't care. Would you care if they had a subsidiary that also did, I don't know, pet, pet care or something like that? No. You're a perfect example of competition at that coalface. That's what you care about. And so if that that Nancy, your cash register person, is an unhappy person because the corporation, Safeway, the $100 billion company, at the corporate level, created an edict that says we are going to have longer hours and no flexibility on allowances for childcare, right? Because we're in charge here, and we're going to make those rules. And Nancy is then unhappy the next time you check out. That influences you, and that influences your loyalty to there. If instead Safeway's got a training program that helps her feel that she's trained on the latest technology, so that when they bring in new technology at her station, she knows how to use it. If they've figured out how to do scheduling, because they're a really big organization, scheduling that's user friendly for single moms. Let's say that helps her deal with their childcare, and so she comes to work kind of joyously. Then the corporation has added value at the coal face, not constrained or diminished value at the coal face.
Yeah, isn't that profound? That is very profound. So you've mentioned a few things there in terms of how we treat our employees and the impact it has on competition. It also occurs to me that so often as executives and owners, we lull ourselves into a false sense of confidence and congratulate ourselves for being masters of the universe because we've figured out this, this strategic plan, and we've got this, the value proposition that nobody else in the market can touch us on. But that's really not what it's all about. So what are the implications then for how executives should be spending a bit more of their time if we agree that competition resides more at the front lines?
Well, it's to make sure that the people at the front lines understand their role very well and are free to make the choices necessary to keep you happy, right? So again, if let's just use, I like your example because it's a vivid one. Let's just say Nancy is given a extremely specific set of instructions that says, when Jeff shows up at your counter, or anybody, it happens to be you, Jeff, shows up, you have to do these 10 things, right? And she knows you well, and she knows that you don't like number 4 at all. You must try to get Jeff to get a loyalty card. You've got to say, now, sir, we have this great loyalty card, and literally, she's asked you that 5 times already, and you said, listen, I've got too many loyalty cards, I don't want it. But because her job is so prescribed as if she can't think, then she'll piss you off and be miserable. If instead, right, she has a role that says, now, Nancy, here's what we're trying to strive for. We're trying to strive for customers being made to feel warm, embraced, and a sense of flexibility. You figure that out, how to do that. Then she'll be thinking about it, and she'll say, well, I know Jeff, and he doesn't want to be bugged about that, but what he really cares about, he always is interested in, is there anything that I've missed that's really on special that you brought into the store and you'd really like it? He likes to be reminded of that. And I'm going to remind him that today in the bakery, we have these incredibly great cinnamon buns that the bakery guy is all excited about, right? That's turning somebody from sort of a choiceless doer that you've tried to make into automaton. And the problem with trying to make people into automatons is people make crummy computers, right? You should just get a computer to do that. Instead of that, it's elevating her to a choice maker who can build her skills, build her ability to make her customers feel deliriously happy to be shopping at Safeway, so that you don't even think about shopping anywhere else. That's the difference between thinking about strategy is something that's done only at the top of the organization, and everybody else in the organization is routinely executing.
Yeah, Roger, let me know if there's a different way that you'd like to approach this. But as we get into this, I can't help but think about the makeup of most of our listeners would be senior leaders of mid-size and small-size companies. And there's some sequencing to this, right? And I wonder, like, Roger, do you think we could distill a little bit of the sequencing of a high performing business right from the time that they start to draft and create the strategy to then creating priorities and goals that permeate all of the organization, get right down to the front lines of Nancy? Like, can we do that in kind of a simplified fashion? Because I think that would be super helpful for anybody that's tuning in.
Sure. So I would say, if now with Safeway, you've picked a gigantic company. Let's instead make it a grocery store that operates, a grocery chain that operates in one city, just for the sake of argument, and maybe has 15 or 20 stores in in one city. It competes against Walmart and Target and I don't know, Wegmans or Ralph's or Kroger's, whoever else is in the market. So you'd want the people running this, and let's call it Jeff's. You'd want the people running Jeff's to say, okay, we've got big mass merchandisers who overlap some with us. We've got the big national chains, grocery chains competing against us. Where do we want to position ourselves? What do we want our 20-store chain to stand for? And let's say that strategy is, we're local. So we want to feel more like we're local. We'll have selection that is more representative of this local community, which has, you know, kind of interests and the like that aren't standard national interests. Of course, they want to have Tide and Colgate and whatever, but they also want some local brands, and our people will be kind of more personable and be trying to find out more about the individual so that they can serve them better, and that'll be our niche. Okay, so that's an overarching strategy. What you'd want to have happen is, you want to then say to the head of purchasing, buying, which is hugely important in these, is to say, you need to figure out how we can be distinctive in what we kind of what products we carry in the store, and distinctive in a local way, right? I don't know. I'm the CEO. I don't know exactly what that would be, but I'm sure there are things that you could do to make us feel local. Kind of go get them, right? So they've got a tricky job as to what choices they need to make, right? Then you get your front of store operations person who's in charge of all the checkouts and everything, to say, people have got to feel this sense of you're in a community store. They really care about you. You're not just in a Walmart or a Target or a Kroger's. It's something local. I don't know how you're going to do that exactly, but that's what you've got to try and accomplish. You kind of figure that out and come back with a kind of a way that you're going to make us distinctive. And in each part of in each aspect of the store, logistics, are we going to get things to the store fresher than our big kind of national, international competitors? You'd have that task set out for them, right? And then what you'd want is that person who's running the front of the store area. So he or she's got kind of checkout people, got store greeting people, whatever, and would say to the head of the person running a checkout, okay, what can we do right at checkout? Do we want less merchandising there, or or more? Do we want it simple and clean? Do we want a completely different style of checkouts that sort of feels more homey and friendly, etc.? So for each person in that entire hierarchy, you'd want them to be thinking, boy, do I have some really important decisions to make, strategic decisions to make, that are in service of this broader strategic goal, but apply directly to what's in my area of authority, kind of all the way down to, I'd want literally that your Nancy in this story to be told, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's the things that I think everybody's got to do. Every checkout person has got to do. But you're a unique person. what do you think about what you can bring to bear so that actually Jeff, he's got 4 checkout people he can go to. He'll wait a little longer to get to Nancy because he just likes the way Nancy does checkout, and he likes the relationship he's built with her. So that I don't know if that's
no, I think that's helpful. I mean, I think that was very succinct and very helpful, Roger. And some of the things I like about it is that you've simplified it, and then by the time it gets down to the front lines where competition is won and lost, it's directionally correct, but open for interpretation, so that there's also a level of autonomy, which is what every human being needs in their work environment.
Yes. And you don't, and what, there's a couple of things too, is you don't want Nancy to be saying, I've got to think about the logistics system that gets stuff to the stores, right? That's somebody else's job. That's not her job. That wouldn't be a good job for her. But you want Nancy to feel like she can say, when Jeff gets disappointed, he comes to me and says, I wanted to buy some kind of red bell peppers, and they're like they were all pretty old and tired looking. You'd want Nancy to be able to go to somebody in produce and say, I don't know how you get peppers to here, but you should just know that I've got customer complaints about just how fresh the vegetables are, or maybe it was a selection question. You'd want her to feel like she has an open pathway to be able to help people above her, to help her help you. Right? Because you're just not going to be as happy to come to Safeway. You're not going to be as happy to be checked out by Nancy if your cart doesn't have everything in it in the quality you were hoping for. She can't fix it, but you want her to feel like there's somebody that's going to listen, and not somebody that's going to slap her down and say, last time I checked, Nancy, you are a checkout person. I'm the head of produce, get out of my face, right? That's a system where the strategy logic flows one way and not back up. You'd want the strategy logic to flow one way, so Nancy is contributing to the store strategy, contributing to the overall strategy, etc. But you'd also want Nancy to be helping you adjust that strategy by providing feedback from the very front lines.
Yes. How do some of the best companies in the world gather that feedback from the front lines?
It's mainly the companies that I've seen do it the best, just have I guess a culture of openness to that it's simply not okay for any supervisor to slap down their subordinates for bringing up things that they've learned from a source that the supervisor wouldn't necessarily have. And a way that happens, Costco is one of my favorite companies because it's so good to its workers. Jim Sinegal, right, the co-founder and long time CEO. He's no longer CEO, but he always walked stores. I mean, he would walk stores, and when he walked stores, because he was a rock star in the stores, I mean, he would be mobbed by the employees who all loved him. But he would be asking them. He would stand beside the butcher and just ask them, well, like, what are you selling? Kind of what would be helpful, whatever. So it's very hard in an environment like that for anybody between Jim Sinegal and the butcher to say, I'm a big cheese, I'm so important, I don't have time to talk to the butcher. Okay, so the co-founder, the multi-billionaire co-founder of this company, 30 years into being the CEO, seems to find time to talk to the butcher. Guess maybe I ought to be doing that too, right? So it again, as I say, as I say in the book, culture happens kind of naturally, takes shape naturally as people interact with one another in the business. And so the companies that do what I've described best, in answer to your question, are the ones that have the senior management show that they listen to lower levels about stuff that the lower levels know more about, right?
Yeah,
Right.
that's some other sage advice there. We should never be so important that we can't spend time with everybody. I think there's some themes there of Amy Edmonton's work on psychological safety.
By the way, so Bob Sutton is top 10 in my world of interesting thinkers. Amy for sure is. She's a friend from a long ago. Both of us are students of Chris Arger, the late Chris Arger. She's fabulous, and you're right. Psychological safety is hugely important, and I would argue kind of. If I would have had guest authors in the book, I would have gotten her to write a chapter on. The theory is you got to kind of keep them intimidated, or they will get out of line. Right? That's the dominant theory, and Amy's theory is. That'll give you the illusion of control, but you will have disastrously bad results. The model you have to have is, are people in my organization psychologically safe? Because that's the only way I'm going to get top-notch performance. Absolutely.
Yeah, we had Amy on the program a year ago. It was a really helpful conversation. Roger, I want to go back to something else that you said in this grocery store example. This high-level strategy being local and personable, and sometimes it drives me a little bit bonkers when I hear companies just relying on shop local as the value prop. Because, hey, I want to support local, but it's also got to be convenient, cost-effective. You got to have good products. But one of the question I have is, when the leadership team is creating this strategy, at that point, it's a bit of a hypothesis. How else should executives be testing those hypotheses before they invest a lot of capital in sort of executing that strategy and getting it down to Nancy?
Sure. Well, I would be asking the Nancys of the company, right? As those senior executives are creating their strategy choices, those incredibly important strategy choices, what they've got to recognize is that sitting at the top of a company, you are generically farther away from the customer than those who are sitting lower down in the organization. And so if I were creating the strategy for that, I'd be in the stores, asking people in the stores about customers. Now, does that mean that I would ask them what they think the strategy should be? Kind of, my answer would be no, and it's the same reason I say you shouldn't ask the customer what product they want. Right? Customer research going out and saying, hey, what product do you want? That's not their job. The job of customers is not to tell you what product they want. The job of customers is to tell you what their problems are, what the things that bug them. And it's your job to figure out a clever way to solve kind of what bugs them. And the same would be for Nancy. I'd be going around to each one of the 20 stores. I'd be sitting down with the store manager and talking to them about what do you think customers care about? What do you think kind of annoys them about Kroger's, a big national grocery chain, or what bugs you about the mass merchants, et cetera. I'd be asking them. I'd be asking the Nancys of the world. Tell me about customers that just love us all the crazy. What do they see? What are they getting? And utilize that information to formulate kind of my strategy. But it's just like customers, having kind of Nancy and a bunch of others in the room brainstorming about what our strategy should be. It's not that I don't think they're smart. They are often they are among the smartest, but it's not their job. It's don't try to make them do a job that's other than their job. Is their job to pay attention to customers? Is their job to understand customers? Hell yeah. And in fact, they do it all day long and are probably better at it than anybody in the C-suite is ever going to be. And so utilize that skill and capability.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Roger, you gave a talk not that long ago. I think it's in the last 6 months in Russia, of all places.
Oh my God.
And
it was hard to tell what was going to happen at the time. Holy smokes! But yes,
no
you're right.
Roger, the talk was, and we'll make the link to that talk available in the post show notes. It was a wonderful, very engaging and thought-provoking talk, and you talk about some of the concepts from that particular talk in your upcoming book. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the relationship between innovation, strategy, and data, and how we get that wrong quite often.
Yep. Yeah. No, this again is a model that's in use, and the model that anybody who's been to business school would have been taught, which is that the only good decisions are data-based decisions. Right? I was taught that. I'm assuming you're taught that. You're some kind of a corporate floozy if you make decisions on anything other than data-based.
Yes. Well, and I spend most of my time trying to justify my wild ideas and how I'm just trust me, they're going to work. I can't prove it, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So maybe I'm 50-50 if I'm lucky.
Well, good for you. You have set yourself free from what you were taught as dogma. So the important thing to point out on this is where data comes from, and it comes from the past. Sort of at the point of analysis. So if you're sitting there analyzing data, right, what we know about that data beyond a shadow of a doubt is that it's from the past, right? Now, absolutely, you could say, no, I'm going to go out and collect data, right? Okay, fair enough. But then when you analyze it, it's become in the past. And so you were taught, Jeff, I'm sure, in your statistics 101 class that in order for you to make any inference from data about the universe you're studying, right, that data has to be representative. You have to have a representative sample. Like if you're trying to find out what people think, right, about X, and you interview only males under 18, and then say, this is what people think, your statistics professor would say, you're nuts. You're making a dangerous extrapolation from an unrepresentative sample. So by definition, this isn't my opinion, this is by definition, if you analyze data and draw an inference from it, the only way that inference can be legitimate is if the future is identical to the past. Then your sample of the past will be fully representative of the universe that you're trying to understand. Now, Jeff, you've been in business for a while. So like, how many times have you seen the future be identical to the past in the world of business?
I was just reviewing my journal from 2 years ago at this time frame, and I've got literally 100 pages of handwritten notes on how the world completely changed 2 years ago, like right now.
Yes. Yeah. So the answer is never, right? So it's never exactly the same as the past. And this is a classic case of the misapplication of a model. So that model of being scientific in your analysis comes out of the world of physical things, right? And so if I take this pen and I let go of it, it's going to drop. And if I analyze pen drops in the past 100 years, you'd say, gee, every time somebody lets go of one, it drops. You can be pretty confident that it's going to drop in the future because there's a universal force called gravity that just doesn't show up on Tuesdays or in the early part of the year. It shows up every day of the year and does the exact same thing as the pens as they leave your hand. What we did, and so in that world, when you collected data and analyzed it, you could trust it was representative. Then we took that and applied it to business, a world where I mean, last time I checked, everything changes all the time, right? I say, okay, if we were doing analysis in 1999 of smartphone and smartphone usage, we would have said, well, it's 0 because the first one came out in 2000, BlackBerry, right?
Yeah.
How many of these are there now? 4.4 billion last time I checked the numbers, right? And so any analysis of the data you would have drawn absolutely the wrong inference from it. So it's one of the most fundamental problems in the world of business. And it's interesting, Jeff, you sound like you really are interested in creativity and innovation. You know, isn't it interesting that as science has become ever more important, right? As business school students, year after year after year have taught, all decisions have to be data-based, or you're a corporate floozy. At the same time, there has been two things happening. One, CEOs of established companies complain more and more and more about the pace and level of innovation. And there's more and more striking examples of absolute disruption where industries are destroyed. You had Borders and Barnes and Noble absolutely dominating the book selling business, and now they're gone. Like absolute disruption by some punk ass little company called Amazon, right? That had nothing, but now is worth trillions. And people haven't drawn the conclusion, right? They haven't linked those two things together. As we've become more data-based, we have stopped ourselves from innovating in the world of business, because, right, if you analyze the possibilities of the smartphone industry in 1999, right, and you made a database decision, you'd say, ain't ever happening. And if you were Nokia and Motorola, that's kind of what you said, right? And how have they been doing lately, right?
Yeah.
They were absolutely crushed because they were being scientifically rigorous. And other people who said, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to do this. BlackBerry being the first, but then kind of Android and all the Android-based phones, iOS-based phones from Apple, just took 100%, literally 100% of their market away. A market that should have been theirs, that they could have been theirs, but they were being analytical. So it's a huge problem for business. If you use analysis, it will tell you not to innovate. That's what it'll tell you. It'll say, do not innovate.
Yes, absolutely. I have a question about Kim Kardashian coming up, but I got a couple more before that.
Oh, yes.
When you talk about
looking forward to it.
When you talk about strategy, you also talk about assessing the strategic decisions and ideas on their logic, and then proving the accuracy of your logic. And I think you've talked about that already. But I want to share my own fear, because when I think about the example of the pen,
sure,
and the pen is going to drop, and that's a universal truth of gravity. Our specific business, I think, is trying to help a fundamental human flaw, and it's discipline. So human beings have a very difficult time implementing things that they learn. And so when I think about our own strategy, I think, well, forever, human beings are always going to struggle with discipline. But then I get a little bit scared and nervous about making too much of an assumption that I get the blinders on and away we go. So because you also say strategy, if it's done right, should scare you. I wonder if you can just talk about the fear part, and then maybe just address my own fear about getting too caught up in worrying about if I've got this universal truth of human beings having a difficult time with discipline sustaining itself for a while.
Sure. Well, why don't I start with the discipline thing? I mean, I don't think your fear is misplaced, and where I would go to on that is habit. So people actually are quite disciplined about the habits they adopt. But getting to habit adoption is a tricky path, right?
Yes.
So I think the reason that people don't seem to be disciplined about something, so I don't disagree at all with your observation that, wow, discipline is hard. So let's just say you have a strategy that says we're going to do this thing differently than we've done it before, right? So let's just go back to Nancy, because that's handy. It's Nancy, what we're going to do is we're going to change the checkout experience, and we're going to have the customers scan their own things, right? That is not her habit, right? Her habit is the belt comes, she picks the stuff up, she's got the scanner right in front of her, she scans it, she sees whether it's registered properly, she puts it over there. That she can do without thinking. And by the way, that's the way the mind likes it best. The mind likes when we do something without expending a lot of mental energy on it. That's a habit, right? Yeah. And so it would be very hard to get her to stop that habit and start a new habit where she helps somebody else do the thing that she used to do. And if you didn't help her get that new habit established, she'll go back to the old habit and say, I know they told me I should have the customer, but they're slow. I'm fast because I'm really good at this. Why do I want Jeff, when he's here, to fumble around with the scanner and take 3 times as long to do it as I would? So what I would argue that the challenge that you have, I would identify it differently. I would identify it as how do you build a new habit, right? Yeah. And you should treat it that way and say, what we have to do is create a support structure that will take her from the old habit to the new habit. And while she's in that interim period, she is going to show what you previously called lack of discipline. I would just call it something different. He hasn't ingrained, her subconscious doesn't have the new habit already ingrained. So it's not a permanent problem of discipline in my view. It's a transitional problem of getting from old habit to new habit.
Yeah, that's wonderfully put. Thank you, Roger. That's very helpful for me personally, and I'm sure it's helpful for the listeners. One last question about Nancy before we move on. You've got some really interesting thoughts on how organizations keep talent. I mean, it's always been important, but with the current talent migration that's taking place around the world, what's the most important thing that leaders have to worry about right now if they want to keep their good people?
It's treating their talent as unique individuals. Nobody likes to be treated generically, in my estimation. Even assembly line workers don't want to be treated generically. Now, it turns out that labor markets have different characteristics in some labor markets, where the people, there are more people kind of wanting the job than there are jobs. A person can say, I'd like to be treated like an individual, and the people offering the jobs will say, sorry, that ain't in the cards. Though, isn't it interesting that a whole bunch of those people now are in short supply? And I wonder why that is. It's because it was unpleasant. It's unpleasant to be treated as a generic check-in, checkout person, a generic shelf stocker, a generic truck driver, right? Or the like. So I think what's happening now reinforces the point. But as you get to more and more unique talent, right? They know that there is no one exactly like them. And that can be a movie star, that can be an athlete, that can be a research scientist, that can be an investment banker, that can be a trader, where the person knows if I leave, they'll have to do something different. right? You're a New England Patriots, fan. When what you and I would think of, but my colleague Jennifer Riel, with whom I wrote a book, would say, no, 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 never. It's Peyton Manning. You and I would say Tom Brady was the greatest of all time. When he left, right? Could you run the Tom Brady offense? No. I mean, just no. You had to figure out a different offense to run. That's an important sort of metaphor, right? If you lose the best oncology research scientist from Pfizer or something, you'll have to run a different oncology research program because you can't find a one-to-one replacement. So there's a whole spectrum from there are one-to-one replacements all the way to there's for sure a one-to-one replacement all the way to there's no way in hell there's a one-to-one replacement, and everything sort of in between. And I say, as you get farther and farther on there's no replacement, unless you treat that person as a unique individual, right? Yeah. You will lose them. And that's what, if we're going to stick to football, the Green Bay Packers sailed so incredibly close to the wind on Aaron Rodgers, where their message to him was absolutely crystal clear until he threw a serious fit last year, which is, we pay you big bucks to throw the ball. Manager, I choose the players, right? You don't choose the players. Players don't choose players. Players are players. General managers are general managers. That's it. Yeah. His response was, hey, man, after 17 years, all pro so many times, MVP so many times, Super Bowl champion, can't I just have a little bit of input? And the answer was no. And then he said, well, then I'm out of here. Now they've figured out that he has to be treated not like every other football player on the Green Bay Packers roster, but as a special talent. Does that mean he can do anything he wants, that he can get any player? No, but he can't be treated generically. And anytime you treat a top talent generically, they will find it revolting at a deep level. Why? It's because they've spent their entire life building up their uniqueness, taking more chances, working harder, staying in the gym longer, throwing more passes, whatever it is, to be uniquely talented at what they've done. And then you say, but you're just generic. And they just say, last time I checked, there are lots and lots and lots of people who would like to use my talent. I'm out of here.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
in my view, though, it bites everywhere along that spectrum. So I think Nancy is going to come to work to check people out better, in a better disposition, with more creativity. If you say, all of you are checkout people, but do you notice, Nancy, I'm sure you do, that Jeff always waits for you. He doesn't take the shortest line, he takes your line. Good for you. You must be doing something that is special, that makes that customer a very happy customer, even to the point where he'll give up a minute or 2 minutes in line or 5 minutes in line for it. If that's the message that she gets, she'll stay, she'll be happier, she'll contribute more, she will provide advice to others around her. She'll be a great employee. To the extent you're told, hey, you're doing something that checkout people are not allowed to do, then the message you're screaming at her is, you are generic, you don't matter, just do exactly what everybody else in your generic class would do, in the same way.
Yeah, no, that's super advice. Roger, I have to do a time check with you. How hard of a timeline are you on? Can you stay a little bit longer? Okay.
I can stay a little bit longer.
Okay, that's very generous of you. Yeah, that's very generous of you, Roger. I want to talk about social media. Now, this is in your last book, When More Is Not Better, and I've been thinking about this a lot. So you talk about the impact that social media has had on the world, and the ease of connectedness that social media has allowed, and the impact that it's had on the economy and distribution of wealth. And the example that you use is how many years it took Frank Sinatra and Cindy Crawford to build up the audience that they had, and the wealth that they created over the course of their careers, where then people like Kylie Jenner, Kim Kardashian, Ronaldo, they're accumulating that much wealth and audience in days or months. So you have some interesting thoughts on the consequences of that on the world. And I wonder if you would share a little bit about what your thoughts are on that dynamic.
Yes. Well, I mean, it is absolutely true. So in the modern world, thanks to markets being connected, and the cost of that connection being lower, and therefore colliding more markets together. And let's just use this as the one you've used as an example. That's what you're talking about, is the market for fame, right? And it's a very, very, very valuable market, right? Which is, as I point out in the book, like Kylie Jenner can make on one sponsored tweet, 1% of what Frank Sinatra made in his entire career. One sponsored tweet, right? Yeah. It's crazy. She can make 1% of what Frank Sinatra. So she has to do 100 sponsored tweets to make his lifetime earnings. So what that's happened is that more and more of the economic returns are going to the people in the very tail of the distribution. So before you had social media connecting fame, the markets for fame were fragmented. There'd be fame in France, but not entirely connected to fame in Germany. Fame in south of France, not connected to fame in north of France.
Roger, I have to say, you're making me think of David Hasselhoff's singing career in Germany.
Yes, no, exactly. Or the fact that all these movie stars have long historically made oodles of money doing incredibly cheesy commercials in Japan. But they were okay to be cheesy commercials. Sylvester Stallone doing milk commercials because they were never seen in North America. You're absolutely right. Or the Spinal Tap reunion tour in Japan, but we won't get into that. So when those markets were not as connected, right? There were more people who could make money on fame within an industry, within a geography, and you would have a wider distribution of the payoffs to fame. When there's one measuring stick, Instagram followers, right? And everybody wants to know who's got 160 or 200 million Instagram followers, and Ronaldo and Kylie Jenner are put in the same bucket, right? Not there's a soccer fame bucket and it's fame bucket. What happens is that the fact that you have Instagram followers is cause of you having still more. It's an accelerating effect, and so it becomes distributed in a Pareto way, which is a word for the 80-20 rule, right? Where a vast majority of the benefits goes to a very few, and that's what's driving inequality, right? In the world, is that the returns to tail of the distribution capability, human capability, talent, if you want to call it that, are getting more and more and more and more extreme. And even though the economy is growing at rates that is not dissimilar to rates that it used to grow at, there's just not nearly as much left over after the tail of the distribution, the people making $100 million a year, $1 billion a year, $2 billion a year, after they've gotten their cut, there's just a lot less. So the median family in the modern economy is stagnating. And that's creating the fissures in democratic capitalism that we're feeling. I mean, people, especially young people, are totally open to just trying something, an entirely new system. How about, or not new to the world, but new for countries. So over 50% of American women under the age of 34 would be happy to try socialism. Men are slightly lower than women. They're not over 50% yet, but women are 50% of the electorate. So, but that to me is all a consequence of more and more of the returns going to the very tail of the distribution.
Yeah, and that's a loaded conversation because, like Roger, on the other hand, part of what I like about the connectedness is it could offer opportunities for underrepresented group, whether it be racial minorities or women, as an example, can perhaps build and grow an audience. And I just see it locally in our own marketplace that there's some wonderful female entrepreneurs, as an example, that have grown social audiences and made their own living and grown their own businesses. I just get confused, I think, when it gets to the point where it becomes excessive and the distribution of wealth is so disproportionate, is how do we find our way back? And I don't expect you to answer that, but it's just something that we all should be thinking about.
No. I mean, the hope of the internet being flattening, right? Taking the highs down and giving everybody a voice and everything else. I just think, unfortunately, has been shattered. Yeah. So you can find minority voices, female voices. There's no question you can. But if you just ask the overall stats, right, has the internet flattened distributions or accentuated the extremes of them? It's accentuated. It's including who's getting rich from it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a couple of companies, Google and Facebook, now own everything, own all that real estate.
Yeah.
And yes, other people can survive, but you can mainly survive, by paying homage to Google and Facebook. Yeah. I don't begrudge Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner or Ronaldo for working on their social media profiles, but they're a very, very, very small number of people, and the fact that they're doing well is not going to help democracy, where 51% of people have to support it. It's not going to help democracy thrive, and especially capitalist democracy, which has been the dominant form of wealth kind of management in the modern world, right? If you just add up all the democratic capitalist countries, right, that's where the vast majority of the GDP of the world is housed. That is now having the biggest challenge it's had since World War II. Yeah. That could be a whole other episode or a dozen. Yes, it could. It could. Yeah, Roger, I've loved this conversation. There are so many nuggets and pearls of wisdom that you have shared with us today. I want to finish off with a few personal questions, if you'll indulge me. Yeah, shoot. So the first one that I have for you, when I just look at the impact and the longevity of your career, I imagine you entering Harvard in the 70s, and just wide-eyed and just there to learn and absorb and take in as much as you could. And then I think there's a point in all of our lives where we have to transition from like the learner to the teacher. And it's not that we stop learning, and you're evidence of that. But do you remember sort of when you made that transition from being like the youngest person in the room and just the wide-eyed learner to being the sage, wise person in the room and having to be the teacher, and what that transitional period was like for you? Very interesting. Huh? Nobody's asked me that question before. So good work. I guess as I think about it, what kind of stunned me, because I was one of the unusual few. They later on cut this off completely. So what does that tell you about people like me? I went directly from undergrad to business school. So I came out of MBA at 24 and got into strategy consulting immediately because I thought that was interesting. And I guess it at first I was sort of like, well, I'm just a kid and I'm kind of here to learn. But I would say what struck me early on is that if you were willing to think a little bit more fundamentally and a little bit longer and harder than even executives way older than you, you could come up with thoughts that would help them solve problems. And that's so it was probably in that mid-20s where I said, you may be just a kid from Wallenstein, the hamlet of Wallenstein, 50 people in the middle of nowhere, but you seem to have a useful thoughts and ideas for people. So I would say by the time I was 30, I saw that as my job, helping people think in a different way about whatever they were thinking about, and ever since that's been what I'm interested in. That's why A New Way to Think is kind of a retrospective book for me. It's sort of like, well, that's what I've been doing. I've been helping people in whatever situation they are, where they're kind of stuck, take on a new way of thinking about whatever is making them and keeping them stuck. And I've really enjoyed it because I really enjoy watching people free themselves up of stuckness when they're stuck at something. And it may be as trivial as, our market share is completely stuck. We flatlined, or our growth is completely stuck, or it's, my career is stuck, or, I keep getting fired from jobs as a CEO. What I do is say, well, from what I can understand, here's the model you've been using that's produced these results, and here's why it's not surprising. It wasn't a dumb model; it just wasn't as effective as you'd like. How about trying this model? And since I enjoy doing it, I just keep doing it, and I'm going to do it as long as I can. As you may or may not know, I'm a Mennonite. I'm a purebred Mennonite from 10 generations on all sides. And Mennonites don't believe, generally speaking, in retirement. So I plan to just keep doing this as long as I'm able to, and as long as I'm able to help people with new ways to think, then I will keep doing it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing a little bit of yourself with us through that answer, and I think I speak for your legion of fans when I say thank goodness you had the courage at a young age in your mid-20s to make that transition. And Roger, if there was one thing, what are you most proud of in your career so far?
I guess it would be, because I spent so long on it, it would be the Rotman School. I mean, I did get hired to take a school that wasn't doing very well and make it be something that University of Toronto could be proud of. I took it on to be something that Canada could be proud of. And I think there was a lot of thought at the time that I was nuts to think that was possible, and we did it. And I used the we word, kind of not accidentally. There was a phenomenal group there around me who set out on that goal and made it something that is great. At its peak, it's come off the peak a little bit. At its peak, we managed to get it up to third ranked in the world, quantitatively, by the Financial Times outside. So the Financial Times rates faculties on the basis of their publication by person. So it's adjusted by person. Number 3 We were irrelevant when we started, like irrelevant, inconsequential, and only Harvard and Wharton were ahead of us by the time we got done. Nobody, not even anybody at Rodman School, anybody at University of Toronto could have imagined that, and we did it. And we had a strategy for doing it, and we went out and did it. So I guess I'm probably proudest of that, and I'm partially proudest of it because it was public service. I left a job I loved, a company I loved, and was one of the major part owners of the company, to come back to Canada to do public service, and I would argue that was 15 years of public service that ended with the country, the province, the city, and the university being better off. So that's probably the one.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's huge. And of course, you can stay connected with us on all your favorite social media platforms. We don't have the following that Kylie Jenner does by any stretch, but we're working on it. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Also on LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel. And you can find today's conversation and all of the prior episodes with people like Amy Ebenson that was mentioned during today's conversation on our website at unleashresults.com. Roger, this is a conversation that I will cherish and go back to just for everything you shared with us today and all the tips and insights. What a wonderful way to spend an hour and a bit. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for your extra time. Roger, where can people track you down and find you?
Well, they can. I have a website where I've organized everything that I've written, and that's just www.roger.rogerlmartin. You got to have my middle initial, L for Lloyd. RogerLMartin.com. I'm on Twitter at RogerLMartin, and you mentioned it. Thank you for mentioning it earlier. The Medium series. If you're on Medium, you just click me, and every week, at least for the last 70 plus weeks, I've written one, and so those would be places to find me. This has been a real pleasure, Jeff, and just do me the big favor of saying a warm hello to Bob next episode. You will, if you haven't had him on before, you will love it. He's funny, he's super smart and interesting. So say hi to him for me.
Roger, just delightful to meet you, and can't wait to keep our conversations going. This has been incredible. Thanks for tuning in. Now, if you found today's conversation helpful, don't forget to share it with your friends and colleagues who like learning as much as you do. And if you're a leader of a business and you're ready to take the next step because you know there's unleashed potential that exists within it, don't wait another minute. Go to unleashresults.com and subscribe to our newsletter. We'll take care of the rest.